Project Snowblind is a first-person shooter released in 2005 for the original Xbox. It was developed by Crystal Dynamics and published by Eidos. You play as Nathan Frost, a super soldier who has been enhanced with various abilities after being nearly killed in combat.
Welcome back, Lieutenant. Close shave, huh? Lieutenant?
His eyes aren't focusing to Green.
Oh.
Initially, you only start off with very few augmentations, such as the vision augmentation, but as you progress through the game, you get the ballistic shield and the reflex augmentations.
You're supposed to be the latest and the greatest, and you don't even have ballistic shielding? Come here. Hold still. They did the same thing to me. There's this dip switch they forgot to... There you go. Ballistic shielding. Watch this. Didn't get hurt there, did you?
Along with your abilities, you'll have various different weapons to use. These vary from sniper rifles, assault rifles, shotguns, more or less the very standard first-person affairs. Some of the more devastating weapons are the sniper rifles, the flechette rifle, and the mine gun. The majority of these weapons have their own secondary fire, which is quite helpful in some situations. You also have various different grenades and different types of grenades you can use at your disposal. These can be used to take out electronic devices such as cameras, turrets. You also have gas grenades, frag grenades, and also spider bots. In terms of enemies, you come across various different soldiers who sometimes have the same abilities as you, such as the ballistic shield, and you'll come across some various bots, turrets, and other automated devices. There'll be situations where you'll be required to use your special abilities, your secondary fire, and your grenades all at once to get through hordes of enemies, but this game isn't by any means hard. If anything, Project Snowblind is basically a walk in the park. The game gives you copious amounts of ammunition, health packs, and bioenergy sims. You'll find that there is minor stealth elements implemented within this game. You may need to get past tripwires and CCTV cameras, but I find triggering tripwires and going through the gas was very little consequence, so I didn't bother with the stealth at all. You'll also find that the enemies in this particular game are not very bright. They'll either just stand there waiting for you to gun them down, or they'll just stand behind a barred fence waiting for you to just shoot them. The enemy tends to leave a lot of these bots and vehicles lying around which you can jump into and annihilate them with. But with the environments being kind of claustrophobic, you get the impression that they're not used to the full potential. Which brings me to another issue with this game. The environments, they're very claustrophobic and tight. You get the impression that this game was made with the limitations of the PlayStation 2 console. There isn't any really varied open environments in this particular game. The game also has that particular PlayStation 2 jank. Some of the environments look very boxy and have some shimmering, and they also use some really low res textures not really found on original Xbox titles. The game doesn't even run in widescreen either, which is a real shame. Using OGXHD, which is an application that you can use on original Xbox titles to force them into widescreen, doesn't really work. You just get a stretched image. The game does although have a really smooth frame rate and runs in 480p, so it looks really sharp on the original Xbox. Just don't expect anything mind-blowing for the console. It is obviously a PlayStation 2 game which is being quickly ported to the console and not received any major upgrades. Another slight criticism is the overall finish, or polish as I should say, of the game. It does have this weird blaring effect, like a bloom effect, which was used in the mid 2000s with a lot of games, especially on the 360 and PS3, and this was the start of that particular era.
It's an honor to serve with you, sir. You exemplify the ideals and principles that made me join the coalition, sir. I look forward to serving you. And
Some of the weapons in this game are pretty cool. I like the mine gun, I like the carbine weapon, especially the shotgun and its secondary fire option. The grenades, however, don't really feel very impactful. You get the impression that they just don't have a particularly large blast radius. You'll throw a grenade into a bunch of enemies and they'll just stand there, shaking their head, they'll get back up and they'll start shooting you again. It's not really satisfying. The levels are particularly short as well. You never get the impression that you're a part of this really big war, with the levels being really small. There's a lot of loading points and there's quite a few cutscenes which break up the action.
Got his position. Be right back.
The music in this game is quite peculiar. This is supposed to be a large-scale war, but there's some levels where you're just walking through the prison areas and it just sounds like the music's just been straightly ripped from a soft porn movie. As it stands, Project Snowblind can be a bit of a guilty pleasure. The weapons in this particular game are very satisfying to use, along with the augmentations. It's just that the AI, the level design, drag this game down. The game does have a multiplayer option, but it is only for online play, so if you don't have X-Link Kai, you're not going to get anywhere particularly far if you wanted to play multiplayer in this game. Speaking of multiplayer, Project Snowblind initially was supposed to be a Deus Ex title. Now this wasn't any particular secret at the time, as it was also in every magazine stating that this used to be a Deus Ex game called Clan Wars, a multiplayer only game. A lot of the features that were supposed to be in that game make it into this title, such as the augmentations, weapons and including those iconic spider bots. Project Snowblind released to relatively positive reviews. It was an okay game and it sold particularly well. Now, a sequel was greenlit, but it was cancelled by Crystal Dynamics after a couple of years. The only thing that we got from this was leaked concept art. The game was due to be set many years after the invasion force had ruined the city of the last game. Unfortunately, this is the only first-person shooter developed by Crystal Dynamics, and for the time being it looks like it's going to stay that way unless anything changes. As it stands, Project Snowblind is very easy to get hold of in today's market. I got my copy for as little as £2 to £3 complete, and for that price you can't really go wrong. Just don't expect anything particularly amazing.